Welcome to Scott's RPG Reviews, a second review this week. I'm shocked. This is the third time I've shot this video. I'm having some technical issues. Hopefully this will work now. So, after I did the Cyberpunk Red review, another book came in the mail today, and it's one I've been waiting for. And I was excited enough, I got to pick it up. I was excited enough about it that I wanted to do a review of it quickly while the iron was hot. And it is the Quintessential Guide to Monster Encounters by Mr. Tarrasque, Wally DM, Dungeon Dad, and JVC Parry. I was particularly excited about this book because I've been a big fan of Mr. Tarrasque and the stuff he's done on YouTube, particularly his stuff that he's done with respect to Cypher System and really pushing Cypher System. And I think his stuff for Tales for the Valiant is interesting. It's a 5e, and I don't run 5e, but he's a really good reviewer, and it's worth watching his channel when new stuff comes out. So let's talk about the Quintessential Guide to Monster Encounters. And when you first see this and you look at the picture, it looks like a classic bestiary, which it is kind of, but it's also not. And let's talk about what I mean by that. And let's start with, how is the book structured? When we open up the book and we go through the table of contents, the first thing we see are essays by the four authors. And it's really tempting to skip these. Because this is just introduction, let me get into the meat of all the monsters. Don't. Go back and read these first. I think in some respects, those pages, those first 11 or 12 pages, are the best pages in the book. And what it is it's each of these GMs' views on what makes good encounters, monsters and otherwise, inside an adventure. What is it that makes a given encounter compelling and one that people talk about and have players are talking about and happy with months, years to come? They have some ideas in common, they have some ideas that are relatively different. But it's really worth reading those essays to say, okay, had I thought about this before? Had I thought about this before? So go back and read those. So these essays are where it starts. And then it gets into a classic bestiary where it's got about 30 or 40 monsters in them. But even this is not typical. Because when you look at them, it's not just a monster description and stats. It includes discussions about, here's how it works in an encounter, here's the problems you're going to encounter with it, here are the motivations behind the monster and how it might be thinking, here's history behind this monster, here's how to use this monster well, here's how not to use this monster in some cases. Most of the material isn't stats or just abilities stuff, it's how do you use this monster effectively in your adventure or campaign. And this is the stuff that's really worth reading because it gives you ideas as how do I make it, again, more of how do I make a good encounter. So it does that for about 100 and some pages. And then after it does that, it goes back and has a few appendices. These appendices are a little interesting. The first one says Jousting Rules. It's Jousting Rules written by Wally DM. Honestly, this feels really out of place. I read them, they're cool. It reminded me of the movie Knight's Tale, which is a movie which is all about jousting. It's basically short, quick, and dirty rules to, if I want to run a jousting tournament, how do I do it effectively? It has, here's how scoring works, here's how the mechanics work, here's the crew, here's etiquette, here's what can get you disqualified. It's really cool stuff, but I'm not quite sure why it's in this book, other than someone wanted to put it out. But read the Jousting Rules. They're worth it. It's just realize that it's very different from everything else. Then you have Appendix B, which is each of the authors and which encounters they worked on. So if you have specific authors you like because of their style or because of their philosophy, you say, okay, here's the ones that focus on this kind of philosophy. Then you have monsters by challenge rating, difficulty level, and then monsters by type. So you have things like undead, constructs, beasts, celestials, humanoids. So you can figure out which one's going to fit within the genre and your particular adventure. That's the book in a nutshell. Oh, it's 26, by the way. 26 encounters. I thought it was 30. It's 26. So it's on the back. So, this is a great book. And it's not a great book because it's got good monsters in it. It's a great book because it makes you think about how to write good encounters and gives you good ideas for writing good encounters. And that's the way I would treat it. So it's not that classic source book. It's more like gives you ideas. There are a couple of books out there. Monty Cook Games has one out there, which I think is How to Run a Great Game or How to Be a Great GM. It's kind of that style book. Definitely worth reading. So that's the good stuff. Now let's talk about what I don't like about this book. The book is written with all the stats being for D&D 5e. And Mr. Tarrasque in particular has been a big proponent of Cypher System and other systems. And I was kind of surprised when he announced this one that he said it's going to be for 5e. Almost made me not buy it because I don't like 5e and I don't like supporting the Hasbro empire. I understand, long pause, I understand why they did it. To be perfectly honest, even though I tilted that 5e windmill, if you're in the RPG industry and you're either writing or your YouTube channel or whatever it may be, 5e is the game. I accept that, is that everybody runs 5e. It's interesting, people say, I can't get anybody not to play 5e. I have no problems with this. But a lot of people say, everybody wants to run 5e and nothing else. I'm like, no, you just don't know how to convince people to run non-5e stuff. I've got like dozens of people wanting to run non-5e stuff. So, but 5e is the game. The vast majority of RPG stuff is 5e. So, if you want a book and you want to be successful and you want to sell lots of copies, you got to publish under 5e. And so I understand it. Plus, that's the majority of the game. So I understand why they did it. I was disappointed that they just did 5e. And it may be a page decision, whatever it be. I'm hoping, and I've suggested this to these authors as well, is that they issue a errata, either online or somewhere, where you take all these stats and abilities and convert them to 5 or 6 different systems. It'd be like a 5 or 10 page document. It'd be really easy to do. But the more I thought about it, the less I began to care about the fact it was 5e after I had read it. And the reason is that the stats are not meaningless, but I'm like, that's not why I'm reading this book to begin with. It's not about using these monsters and using these stats. It's about getting ideas for writing good encounters. I'll probably never use any of these monsters. I might. There are a couple in there that I said, you know what, these would be kind of interesting in a Numenera universe, which Numenera can take just about anything. But honestly, it's unlikely. Numenera has so many thousand monsters anyway. I'm like, why do I need to add these in? They don't add much to what's not already there. So I realized that, yes, this is written for 5e, but honestly, it doesn't matter because what I'm interested in is the non-5e content. So, great book. Whether you're a new GM just getting started or you're an experienced GM and looking for fresh ideas, go out and buy this book. It's on Drivethrug RPG. I'll see if I can put a link in the comments section. I'll also try to put a link to Mr. Tarrasque's YouTube channel. I happen to have a link to it. And if the other authors watch this and want me to put links in for their YouTube channels or whatever as well, just let me know. Have a good day.